welcome to HealthLink, a program connecting home, community, and healthcare. My name is Merton, and I am delighted to welcome two guests to the program today who will be talking about Glassworks Co-operative, an exciting new adventure that's coming to our area in Owen Sound. So I have with me as a guest Kelsey, Carriere, and Jan Chamberlain. Both are guests who are going to be talking about Glassworks and filling us in on how things are going and phase one moving into the next phase. So welcome to both of you. And I'm wondering if you can describe your role and your involvement in Glassworks first before we actually talk about what is Glassworks.
You bet. Well, my name is Kelsey Carriere, and I've been acting as the president at the Glassworks Co-operative for the last few years. And I'm absolutely honored to be working with this dynamic board and our over 100 members now. Really sort of pioneering, I guess you could say, a cooperative-led community development project. It's not something we see very often. Housing is often left to the developers, and we know how important it is to have communities that reflect the people that live there. So we're just so excited to be able to bring a project like this to Owen Sound. And I would like to introduce Jan, who's also on our board and brings decades of dynamic experience in the community. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Kelsey. And you didn't really say all the background you have that makes you so appropriate for this role of our president. My situation is that I got asked a year ago by Kelsey to be part of one of their community and educational components on aging in place. And that came about because of my housing connection to the Owen Sound nonprofit housing. And when I did that aging in place, I was actually very excited to learn more about what Glassworks was, to the point where I decided to join the board and become very passionate about this project. And it is a place where I really do feel I will be able to live in the future with a group of people in a cooperative living with a community space, communal kitchen, and lots of different ages. So I'm really, and it is one of the things we need very badly in this community, is more housing that's affordable for people. So that's how I got involved.
Excellent. So I've done a little bit of research into Glassworks and certainly had the opportunity to see, your reports, which was just wonderful. What really captures me, you have a vision for the future around housing. And if you don't mind, I'll just name what your categories are, because I'd love for you to expand on how Glassworks will be able to bring this to Owen Sound. So I said, I'm reading that Glassworks believes the future of housing must be affordable, net zero, zone for mixed use, multi-generational, community-led, developed with a decolonized lens, and accessible for all. That is an amazing vision for housing. So what is Glassworks?
You bet. So thank you for pulling out that list, because it's not always the list that tops the list of motivations of the bulk of housing developments that we see across the board. But working as a cooperative towards a community vision, to us, these are sort of inseparable and integrated motivations. So the affordable piece, we all know, especially since the pandemic, so many folks are getting priced out of our own local housing market. And there's such a diversity of ways of how folks live within their communities and numbers of household members. And we really envision a wide range of housing typologies where people can live in like very affordable, beautifully designed and efficient, humble spaces, but that are connected to great amenities. So having a smaller private space doesn't feel like you're missing out on anything at all, because the main amenities are envisioned and shared. So the affordable piece is addressed both through the intention and motivations of this community-led development, but then also through the design, where everyone isn't paying for large dining rooms that only get used once a week if company comes over, or spare bedrooms. So having some of these more shared amenities in the common spaces really helps reach that affordability level without feeling like anyone's missing out on anything. The net zero piece, I mean, we talk a lot about this two converging crises of affordable housing and climate change, that one does not take precedent over the other, that they're both wildly urgent, and that there's no reason that they need to be separated in the housing conversation. So we've been doing lots of great research. There's incredible work being done by sustainable housing organizations across the country, because we're all pushing for net zero. We know that the building code is changing, that net zero is going to be required of all new builds in the not too distant future. So we're really just jumping the gun and making sure that that's part of our planning right now. The mixed use piece, what that means is that we're not keeping the parts of our life totally separate. So, if we think back to why planning exists, the different zones, the way they do, we can go back as far as the Industrial Revolution in England. And things were growing wildly quick, and there were huge factories spewing coal-fired smoke into people's neighborhoods, which clearly wasn't good planning. So we've been really careful to separate those uses to make sure that, industry is separate from where folks live, so that it's not impacting residential communities. But we also have learned since then that keeping all the uses of our life separate means that we're all stuck driving to the grocery store, to the gym, to our children's school, to the soccer field. And so mixed use is really thinking more about having more of those elements connected, within a 5, 10, 15-minute walk of where we live, so that we can really be thinking about being a lot more, being able to get around a little bit more with active transportation, and having more amenities that we use on a regular basis connected and built into our community planning.
Yeah.
The multi-generational piece that you mentioned, I'll let Jan riff on that, and I think maybe just the two more that I'll mention quickly, and then pass over to Jan. I'll save accessibility for you too, because that's connected with the multi-generational living. And then why don't you come back to me about the reconciliation piece, because that's a huge part of our thinking.
Yes, it is.
Do you want to take the floor there, Jan?
Yes, if I could just say that I'm a nature lover, and one of the big attractions is that we have 46 acres. We will be making some garden trails. We got community gardens. We have trails started already. There will be lots and lots of ways to work with the land, plant trees, do all of the sustainable things that I love to do because of our climate change away. So that is another big draw. And that was the other thing. When I joined, they already had purchased the property, and it's wonderful. So I see myself being able to be very active and outside a lot by being there. So the interactive is, I still need the younger people to do some of the heavy lifting. So I feel that will be really great to have an intergenerational thing. Yes.
Yeah. So the property you have purchased, and it's within Owen Sound, but it sounds like you're beginning the development from the ground up, literally, and designing it without having anything like you're able to create it as you're going forward, which is very, very exciting. I would think that the multi-generational is a wonderful way for communities to be able to appreciate the different generations and to be able to share the wisdom and knowledge and also the joy of different generations as well. We certainly see the need of that in different areas for sure.
And we see, Carol, that it will be different economic backgrounds too. There will be there because some people will own. I've been telling people that I think we'll likely start with some tiny homes type of thing, but we'll also work with a cooperative. And maybe, Kelsey, that's all the design piece that you're so good at explaining, so I'll let you go with that. Yes.
But before Kelsey does, and that's great, accessibility, Jan, that's a big concern, certainly. How will that work with the Glassworks?
Well, I think that's the plan that we will have for all the development will be accessible, especially in the communal space where we'll likely have everything that's needed as far as the wider doors, all on one floor, being able to use your walker and all of those things. We will definitely be doing the accessible piece to the community.
So right from the get-go. From the beginning. Yeah. How did this idea begin, in sound? I mean, where did it come from, and how will it be able to be developed? We hear about costing a building and all that. So fill me in a little bit on your vision for making it happen.
So I can speak to a really wonderful partner that we're just developing called New Commons Developments. So they're a not-for-profit housing developer. They historically worked in the bigger cities in Vancouver and Toronto, but are expanding their work into smaller towns, recognizing, especially with the pandemic-fueled housing prices, that, affordable housing is not just an urban issue anymore. We historically had a lower price point in our housing market, so the discrepancy and availability wasn't quite at the crisis level that we're witnessing now. So with that in mind, they bring a whole slew of development expertise, particularly in nonprofit and affordable housing projects, as well as a whole backing of investment. They have a whole investment, like a finance wing of folks who understand and appreciate the value of affordable housing projects and are investing in them because, ultimately they do make money, clearly not as much as, high class condos, but, the return is there. And so New Commons comes with a whole wonderful background of investors.
So you actually have the content experts, the resource experts, and investors who understand what your vision is and how you want to move forward. So that's remarkable.
And I just wanted to give a little shout out to all of the community members that have actually helped us get to this point, because, getting to the point that we could even approach someone like New Commons has been a few years in the making. And, all of our funding, we have had a couple great supports from federal grants, but the bulk of it and the purchase of the land was done by community members who believed in the project from the beginning and enough to lend us some savings that they had tucked away in order to jump on this opportunity. And so just a shout out to everyone who's believed in the project enough to get it this far.
And that was a big step for me, Carol, when I learned that part. That was so important to me to realize that we had members who all believed in this, and so it was easy to step on. And they've actually it's a year ago that we bought the property, and a lot of them it's loans, and we just were due to give them some interest, and we just reached out to ask people if they needed their interest or if they could forgive it. And almost to a T, everyone has forgiven their interest. It's not just keep this going. Isn't that wonderful?
That's
and I think that's a story that the community really needs to know, that we've got some really good people with wanting to live here as well, and that's why they want to see it go forward. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, Kelsey, but I know you do want to talk about the reconciliation piece, and I think that's so important for us to talk about too.
Before we go to that, I'm wondering if you'd like to discuss how, do you accept donations? How can people continue to fund this initiative? Maybe you could speak. This is your chance to put a plug in for financial support. So take it away.
We can't give out receipts yet until we become the charity piece is going. We're working on doing some flow through with Community Foundation. But right now, we've been sort of asking people to become members, and also corporate memberships we have, and that's what we've been doing. But we will be starting some fundraising. Kelsey, have you had the latest version from the lawyer about where we're at in that line for our charity? Because it's monthly, we check on that.
You bet. Yeah, anyone who's been through the process knows it's a lengthy one with the Canada Revenue Agency approving it, but it's looking promising. So we're hoping to hear back later this month. But all that is to say that we are another way of supporting Glassworks financially is we have this wonderful Sustainers program. There's a few dozen folks who contribute monthly, everywhere from $5 to $150 a month. That really, we have monthly expenses. We have our first staff person hired now. We're paying down the mortgage on the property. So, as we get to the stage where we have, getting through our planning approvals and getting towards construction financing, between now and then, it's just such a wonderful support to have these monthly sustainers really contributing. We say for as little as the price of a cup of coffee a week. Dozens of people doing that really is keeping the wheels on the project until we get to that next big stage of construction financing.
So if people go on the website, the Glassworks website, that's where they can learn more about the Sustainer program and also sign up, correct?
You bet. So the website is www.glassworks.coop, COOP at the end instead of the .com or .ca that you might be used to. So glassworks.coop, and you'll see it right there on the front page. Become a member, become a sustainer, and just to know what an incredible difference it makes for this project. Dozens of community members making a small regular contribution is what this project is made from.
Yeah. Now you do have a board. And I'm wondering if you'd like to mention who is on the board and the role of the board.
Do you want to jump in there, Jen?
Sure,
I feel like I've been feeling the floor.
We just had 3 new board members come on at our annual meeting in December. That was Michael Johnson he's a lawyer in town, an Indigenous-led person, and Diane Austin from the Chamber of Commerce, and Tanya. Tanya's last name, Kelsey? Yes, and her background is she works for Parks Canada, but she's got a big background in being
planning.
Planning. So other members that have come on earlier before the AGM, we had Bob Strike from Toronto, who's been in a lot of history with cooperative housing. Sylvia Strathern from Owen Sound, who's with the Lutheran Church situation with their housing. So she's our treasurer and a big help. Pat Kelly has new from Ottawa that's come on our board, who has a background and also would like to live here. So she's moved to Owen Sound, has all of her children and grandchildren now in Owen Sound, and she would really like to live at Glassworks. And then myself, and I think I got the 9 of us on the board, and then our staff person is Kate Mosier. And she's new on the ground as well. Yes.
So I'm wondering, Kelsey, one of the vision statements talks about being developed with a decolonized lens. And I'm wondering if you can expand on what that means and how you will achieve that.
Thank you so much for asking. So from the very beginning of the project, that our commitment to sustainability, to affordability and community also included a very strong intention to see how this project could contribute to decolonization and reconciliation. And, some people might think that the work they're doing isn't connected to that at all. But I mean, being on the traditional territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, we had this heartfelt commitment from the beginning. So what we have done with that is Shirley John from Saugeen, Strong White Buffalo Woman, has been engaged with the project from the beginning, really directing and kind of mentoring us in our thinking for how to incorporate the land itself as it is, the water, the biology, the biodiversity of the landscape into our sort of thinking about the land. But more than that, we're really committed to working with the local First Nation communities to see how we can support housing specifically for them. So we have been in conversations with Giwe, the Indigenous Supportive Housing Program, and written a couple grants together, which we're hopeful for, that will allow us to really work directly with local elders, as well as local folks in need of housing, to be part of this community design process, to bring Indigenous ways of knowing into not only the physical design of the space and how we're thinking about the ecology and the resource use and renewable energy sources, but also how we think about a community holistically, how we think about childcare and elder care and looking out for each other, and how that is reflected in the design to encourage this kind of collaborative living. And it's been a really wonderful process, because the more we learn from partners like Jonathan Redbird, who's the grandson of Duke Redbird, you may know as a poet and filmmaker. He's really had his interest sparked in the Glassworks project too, from a long-standing vision that him and his grandfather Duke have had about Indigenous communities of the future. And the more we talk, we see how similar our visions are, and how much sense it makes to be really welcoming an Indigenous-led perspective to bring these traditional ways of knowing and living on the land and living with each other into the actual community design.
And that's remarkable, because you don't hear that a lot in the traditional planning of new builds or proposals for development. So that is remarkable, and certainly a very intriguing approach to a development. It truly is. So as far as we hear a lot about community gardens and communities helping to sustain themselves, how will Glassworks take those concepts forward?
So as Jan mentioned, the property that we got is 46 acres, and it's certainly not envisioned to be wall-to-wall housing.
Okay.
We have a definitely holistic approach to the property, and in fact, the part of the vision is incorporating regenerative agriculture projects with local partners that will, on one hand, provide extremely local food and support local agriculture entrepreneurs on some of the property, but also help us create a little bit of a buffer. So the property that we've purchased, it is on the east hill of Owen Sound, and is currently part of the industrial zoning. Because of the 46 acres we have and some of the existing forest on the land, there's plenty of room to create buffers and keep the housing separate from our industrial neighbors with a nice buffer, the way zoning was meant to accomplish, and agriculture will help create that.
Yeah.
As well.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just also wanted to mention we've been talking about the land itself and the opportunities for active transportation and keeping folks active on the land. And the beautiful thing about this property is that it's right abuts the rail trail that encircles Owen Sound. So we all know, if you're skiing or biking, how brutal the hills into downtown can be. They're so steep. And the wonderful thing about the rail trail is that it's a natural, gentle slope created for the train systems decades ago. So we have this wonderful access of a nice, gentle slope going right downtown along the water. So even though on the map it might feel a little bit at the edge of our current communities, it's really wonderfully connected in that way.
So I read that you're pretty much through phase one. How many phases do you have? And dare I ask, when you might hope for a shovel digging in the ground?
You bet. So I know it's been a long wait already for folks who've been with the project from the very beginning, but these projects clearly don't happen overnight. It'll likely be a few years yet before we can dig out our shovels. We have lots of conversations to have yet with the local planning department and going through the whole approvals process of submitting the design. Leading up to that, this year is going to be actually quite focused on the community design process. So really taking everything that we know should be part of the project, everything that we want to retain and maintain, what's currently on the land, beautiful little creeks and a pond and the forest and some old orchard fruit trees, and connecting everything and connected with our business model. So, every decision you make has a price tag attached to it. So that's the work we'll be doing this year, is really sort of reconciling the price tag and all of the essential elements that we know we want to be part of the project.
So Carol, we're trying to tell people that we're still at pre-planning, but we are going to visit on the land next week as part of a retreat we're doing with the board. And one of the questions we're going to ask is when do we see ourselves being here, and when do we see things happening? Because we're pretty excited about getting to that place, but that's what New Commons is going to help us with, is this pre-planning and getting the approvals done this year. So the other thing I wanted to say is with the Indigenous led project, we have picked a method of working together as a board with sociocracy. And this was new to me because I mostly only used rules of order and from council to all of that, Carol, which you know about. But with sociocracy, it's not really consensus, it's consent. And it's a really dynamic and nice way to do our work together. So I've been excited to be so engaged as an older person in this community that has meant so much to me, and to think that I still have something to offer and to help make this happen. And we do appreciate that you had us on here today, Carol, for sure.
Well, I am delighted, and I'm so excited to hear about the project and how you're moving forward. So I'm extending an invitation right now for you to come back as you move through the process and keep us informed about Glassworks Cooperative and how it's moving forward. I think certainly it's an exciting project and new to a lot of people, for sure. So standing invitation, you have my number, you know how to reach me. I want to thank you both very much for taking the time to be with us today. And I want to also thank our viewing audience for joining us. Please stay tuned to learn more about programs, resources, and services available to you and to your family. Stay tuned to ongoing community events, and of course, tune in to the Glassworks Cooperative website to learn more about their exciting development. Take care, stay safe. Thank you.
Bye, Carol.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Don't forget to tune in to Grey County Life at Home next week. We'll be talking with the Downhill Band, a Juno Award winner.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy, or you could use the Arrive Alive smartphone app